ladies and women across the country, really. People we know that inspire us and are on a journey to finding their sweet spot.
The sweet spot.
Well, shouldn't be yesterday. Hey, Lenora.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. We're almost. Are you wearing yellow?
We're matching.
Oh, we're almost matching.
Welcome to the sweet spot, everybody. We're matching today. Yay. I'm kind of glowing too much, I think. I think I have too much of the.
Oh, it's always a little bit scratchy when we start, so but now it levels out.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Happy it's Friday.
Yes.
For another week. That's a good thing. How about you?
Yeah. Same. The weeks just seem to blend. Like, I think I've gotten this new rhythm where if I can make it through Monday and Tuesday for some reason, then the rest of the week feels okay.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's all good. Nothing really exciting.
I know. Kind of
going
a quiet.
here.
I know. Me too. I feel like it's been a quiet week. Weather was kind of nice today, and yeah, nothing too exciting happening.
Right, which maybe is good. I don't know, because it feels like we had this whole year full of, well, 4 years of turmoil
Right?
and stress and worry, and now I don't know. It's like, okay, well, what do we do now? We don't...
I know. Well, you know what? I think it feels more normal for me because I went out to eat like twice this week.
Oh, nice.
I know, right? Yeah.
Where did you
I
go?
kind of thought I wasn't gonna do it, but we just went to like a couple of local restaurants, but I kept thinking, oh no, we're not gonna go out. But then it was like, why not? And it was fine. It was totally fine. Like one of them was like tiny little, we went to Ricardo's and it's tiny, so
Yeah.
there wasn't a lot of people around. And then another one was a chain restaurant, but they still had like the plastic, I don't know, between each booth. It felt safe. I kept my mask on until my food came.
Yeah, I put mine on. I mean, I take it off when we sit down, but then I'll put it on when the server comes over.
Yeah, because that's respectful.
Yeah, out of respect for them, and then take it off, and then but we haven't been out a lot. We went to Well 80
Okay.
last week, I think. And it felt really safe. They have the table so spread apart.
Yeah.
And they have the plexiglass and everything. So yeah, but it is nice to just get out. It feels a little bit normal.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, I remember this.
All right.
Yeah.
I like at the Ram they had the menus. I think you see that a lot. Like the menus are just like a little, what's it, the QR code, and then you just use your phone and scan it. And then I was like, why don't we don't need a menu. This is like a waste of paper and materials.
Yes. All the things that we've been forced to adapt
I know.
and adopt. Yeah, like why weren't like the funniest one to me is the birthday cake. Like, are we really going to go back to blowing on birthday cakes after this?
That's disgusting.
Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did that and then we all ate it. Someone spit on a cake.
And they were like, oh, this is good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was so wrong.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so I have
hoping we don't adopt some things. Hoping some things stay gone.
Yeah, some of the stuff we don't need to bring that back. I think shaking hands with people is probably another one that I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not going to shake hands as much anymore. I'm good.
Good with the like the fist, like knuckles, fist bump, elbow.
Yeah, exactly. Um, did you see that? Apparently, I'm late to the party, but there's this video on YouTube where this guy, I think he's a lawyer, and he was talking to this judge. I think they had like a court kind of case, but it was all Zoom. And somehow one of the lawyers' faces became a cat. And so I keep watching it and I'm just like crying. Like I
Yeah,
can't, because the cat's so cute and it's got these big eyes and then its little
yeah.
eyes were going. And then the guy goes, I'm not a cat.
I know that's my favorite part when the guy
Oh
is
God,
like,
it's so funny.
I swear, I'm really not a cat.
I'm not a cat. And the judge is like, yeah, I know you're not a
Yeah,
cat.
we know. That's thank you.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah,
You're not a
you're not a
talking
cat.
cat.
Are you I forget, are you on TikTok?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's a good way to waste
No, it is a
time.
good way. I think
Yeah.
that's the problem. I know that I would probably be, yeah, I'm not on there very much, but I am I have an account, but not very
Yeah.
much.
I love it. Just because people are so creative and funny
I know.
and things like that. I'm like, oh my gosh. I wouldn't have seen it otherwise unless I saw it on TikTok.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Someone texted it to me and I was like, oh, and then I texted some other friends who are like, Lenore, that was like 3 weeks ago. I'm like,
Oh,
oh, so late to the party.
yeah.
I need to get on TikTok every day.
Yeah. Well, and I'm obsessing now. Have you seen the latest one about this middle part?
No. Uh-uh.
Yeah. So apparently the side part is out.
Oh yeah. That's millennials apparently.
Yeah. And the middle part is
Middle
in,
part is in.
and
Yes.
skinny jeans are out.
Oh, okay.
It's
And flare.
wide legs are back.
Okay, so this is like
So
70s. Like this is 1974, just wide leg and yeah, Marsha Brady. Okay,
yeah.
no thanks.
So I don't know. My hair happens to be kind of parted down the middle today. I
Yeah,
don't know
it
why,
looks
but
good. It looks good. I like it.
it's
All
I
right,
don't know. It's so hard to keep up.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have a cool show today. We have two of my friends on here and kind of like colleagues, and we're going to talk about race, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah, I'm
I'm
excited.
excited. Yeah.
Yes. I think
I
this is
know
a good
every week
way.
we
Yeah,
say
it's a
that,
good way
but
to end Black History Month. I think is to just kind of talk again and do some level setting about what DEI all is, because I think some people that I don't know. I think different organizations call it, EDI, DEI, RED. Like there's so many different ways to do it. But we're gonna have two kind of human resource professionals in this field explain to us like what this is all about and how does this kind of relate to Black Lives Matter and why should we care about this? And I think there's a lot of people that are, because of George Floyd's murder, that have become allies. And I think it's really good to keep talking about this and reminding everybody of our past and where we need to go.
yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think I talk about it almost, if not every other, maybe almost daily.
Yeah,
It's on the forefront of my mind now because
right.
I mean, it goes like when you know better, do better.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so you can't, once you know, you
Right?
can't
Can't turn back.
unknow.
Yeah,
There's, yeah. And like for me, the only way to deal with the sorrow and the grief is to just be a vocal and just keep talking
right.
because that's how I know to process grief and
Mm-hmm.
sadness. So yeah, I'm so happy that you reached out to them and that they're coming on to talk
I
about
know.
and continue our learning. I think there's a lot of misconceptions. I know for sure I'm embarrassed about some of the things that I used to think I knew or
Exactly.
even things I used to say just because of, lack of understanding.
Right. and you got to do your homework, right?
Yes.
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 All right. So
for
let's
sure.
bring them on. So we've got Billy.
Woo,
Hello.
woo, woo. Hey,
How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Awesome,
Good.
awesome.
Good. And there's Tammy.
Tammy.
Hi, Tammy.
Hey,
Now I can't remember if you two know each other.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, yeah.
well, we're all in this work.
Yes. So why don't you both? Do you want to introduce yourself, Billy? Do you want to go first and
Yeah,
about
I'll
yourself?
go. So, how I got to know Lenora, and I don't know why, Sarah. It seems like I know you from somewhere. You seem familiar. I don't know. But how I got to know Lenora and Tammy is working through Washington State government, working with Department of Labor and Industries as their HR director. At one point, I was an HR consultant there, and then with the Employment Security Department, I was their chief learning officer, and eventually I was their chief HR officer. And along the way, I got to know Tammy extremely well.
Okay.
She worked on all things employee engagement related, from disability to LGBTQ rights to diversity, equity, inclusion, you name it, she was on it. And it seems like where her face was in the room, my face was in the room. So we kind of hung out like that together. So, but now I'm back in Texas. I'm no longer with Washington State, but just because I'm no longer with Washington State, I'm very much connected in the DEI space.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. And Tammy Petrie, it looks like Billy, you did a great introduction of me already. More there is to say, but basically, I work really closer with Lenora right now as I'm at OFM, of course, still with the state of Washington, with our state HR office is where I'm located. And I've been in this work for so many years. I'm getting to the end of my career. I'm a little bit excited about that, a little nervous about the unknown, but I've been in this work for, I want to say 20 plus years. So. Yes, I'm excited about today. So thank you, Lenora, for having me here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that would make sense is to just kind of define what these acronyms that have been floating around mean. And I know they've been around for a while, but for some people it might be new. So can you explain, like, let's just kind of break it down a little bit, unpack it, like diversity, equity, inclusion.
Tammy, you and me first.
I'll go. I'm just jotting down some notes because there's so many different definitions, but they basically come to mean the same. So I'll start with diversity, and this is just my definition. It's the representation of all varied identities and differences, race, gender, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, tribe, class, social, economic status, thinking and communication styles, etc.
Wow.
A bit collectively and as individuals.
Yeah. And my take on it too, when you're talking about diversity, Tammy, you hit on the one key word that I think is so important for people to understand about diversity, and that's differences.
Yes.
That is basically the bottom line of diversity, because every time you mention that word, the first thing that comes to people's mind is race.
Yes.
Right.
And diversity is so much more than race. It's like the iceberg effect, right? Everybody knows that it's not the iceberg that the Titanic saw above water that wrecked the Titanic. It's the one below it. And so when you're talking about diversity, you can easily tell I'm a Black woman who wears glasses. Okay, you can tell that. You probably can tell I'm from the South because I got this little twang thing going on or somewhere about that. You can probably tell some things about me, right? But you don't know what's beneath all of this. You don't know if I'm married or if I have kids or if I have a hidden disability. You don't know all those other things. So when you're talking about diversity, it is anything that's different. It's just really differences. It truly is. And it's not just the one thing. Race is just one part of it, but there are so many different dynamics to diversity. And that's where I think organizations really kind of get off track when they want to implement a DI program. They want to say, can we do some training on race and unconscious bias? Well, let's define diversity first.
Right.
Let's do that first, and then kind of step back a step or two. Yeah. But then I'll take the next one, Tammy, if you don't mind. And then there's that other thing called equity, because people think that equity means equal, and it's not. It's really about fairness. That's basically what equity is. You see a lot of things. Washington State does a great job in pay equity, especially when it comes to gender pay. And so when you're talking about equity, it's really about fairness. Am I treating Lenora the same as I'm treating Sarah? It's fairness. It's not equal. Equal is not the same. It's equity. It's really about fairness, basically. Yeah.
Okay, and I'll take the next one, inclusion. And, I look at it as building a culture of belonging by actively inviting the contribution and participation of all people. Every person's voice adds value, knowing that not one person should be called upon to represent an entire community. I think that's so important because folks get lumped together, sometimes just by the color of their skin, that everybody.
Oh, Tammy, you froze up.
Oh, did I freeze up? I'm moving around too. I'm being really animated here.
I can see her.
Okay.
I can see her, but I can't hear her.
Oh, I'm
She's
sorry.
not moving. Oh, there you go. I can now.
Okay. I'm not sure where I left off, where you missed, but basically I'm just ending it on knowing that not one person can or should be called upon to represent the entire community when we talk about inclusion. And I think that's so important. It's we all are individuals. We may come from the same race, we may come from the same educational background, social economic background, but we still are individuals.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And the other thing too that I like to add about inclusion is that it's really about how do you leverage all those differences that you bring to the table. That's really what it's about. And when people talk about inclusion, I used to have this one young lady at ESD, I won't call her name, but she had this saying about inclusion, and it kind of goes along the same lines as with belonging. She says, I want to work at a place where I feel warm, welcomed, and wanted.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. Yeah. What it is. She calls it, I call it my Wonder Woman thing, my triple double. Warm, wanted, and welcomed.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too, because it truly is about that. How do you leverage all that to make sure that people their differences are included in your culture?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah, I feel like you've got a question coming.
Oh, so many. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was thinking, first of all, thank you for, putting those definitions out there. I think they're wonderful. And why is it so hard? That was the thing I was thinking, because to me, those definitions feel so easy for me as a person. And I know I have flaws and I still have tons of room for growth and learning, but it feels easy to me to be warm and welcoming to people. How do we get it so wrong?
Deep question, Sarah.
The biggest question of all, right? How do we solve world peace? You both have so much experience.
So, Tammy, you and me.
Wonder.
Well, I'm chomping at the bit, but I'm going to let you go because a really quick response. But go ahead, Bill.
When we're talking about this, so you mentioned earlier, Sarah, about George Floyd's killing, and that's a very difficult film to watch. And I will be the first to admit I couldn't watch it past two viewings of it. I just couldn't. As a mother of a Black man, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. It's too emotional, too draining, and I don't ever want to go around giving the side eye to white people. I'm just going to put it out there, because it will take you there. It will take you to a very different place if you let it manifest with you that way. And it's not that so many people are getting it wrong. For lack of better words, it's just that they haven't educated themselves around it. It's ignorance, because people are afraid of what they don't know and understand.
Right.
And it's also change. If you think about your everyday life, every day you put your feet on the ground, you're going through some kind of change. Something's going to happen. Somebody may move your favorite mug or change it. You don't have your right kind of coffee. You got to change your mindset like that to adjust to whatever's available. This is it's pretty much like that when you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're asking people to now starting to change how they think about this very topic. And it is an uncomfortable topic for white people. It is a very uncomfortable topic because you've never had to deal with the things that people of color have to deal with. And so when you're talking about it, it makes it seem that you are the byproduct of your ancestors. And so you're the oppressor. And so people, you kind of wonder, am I this person? And you're not. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. But you have to really, if you're really intent on learning about it and about me, you have to be willing to step out there to be uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
And to ask me, because I just had a conversation with a young lady I'm mentoring today. We had a conversation. And one thing I wanted her to know, because she is a Black female HR director for an organization, and she's the only person of color on their leadership team. And I said, I want you to really understand that it is not your job to educate white people about you. If you really want to know about me, you need to ask me. And that is how the conversation begins, because I don't want to walk into a room and people say, hey, there's Billy. She's a Black person. Ask her. She ought to know. That's not how this works. And people make that. I see Tammy nodding her head because people think that. And so we have to break that. We have to break that cycle and say, just like you go to school to get an MD, you learn it. You find a way, you make yourself become educated about that. Make yourself become educated about differences, about different types of people. That was a long way around.
Great job. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Tammy, are you going to add into that one or no?
No, I think she took that and wrapped it up with a bow. I mean,
hey, I'm sorry, Tammy. I get so passionate about this because it is just one of those things that is so necessary. And Tammy, you and Lenore, you know this too, just being in HR. Diversity, DEI has really been relegated to another HR function, just another function in HR. Never anything brought to the forefront except when they're doing strategic planning and they're talking about numbers. They're looking at the numbers, and it's usually around race and gender, never around pay and age. And so they're looking at those kind of things. And now that it's been relegated to the point, because we had a turning point on Memorial Day, let's just keep it real. And now that turning point has happened, everybody wants a DEI officer. Right. But they don't know what they really want. They really don't. They say they want it, but what is it that you really want? Because that is a very hard topic and conversation to have. You're putting out statements about your commitment to it, but what is it that you're actually doing as an organization that shows you're doing it? That's the other thing. And go ahead.
So what do you think are some first steps for people that are kind of, again, new to this journey and they want to talk to their neighbor about race?
Tammy, my mouth is dry. I've been
like,
talking a lot.
What would you recommend that? How should people start? I know there's no hard and fast rules, but there's.
Well, I have, again, I jotted down some notes. You'd start with understanding and examining your own understanding of race, right? So in saying that is having that discussion amongst, your friends, your family, really being intentional about the conversation, right? So examining yourself, be comfortable with terminology, and familiar in how certain concepts are used, right? So really doing your research, really having your training around those things. And then, for example, if you have children and they bring up topics about race, don't be afraid to keep the conversation going with your kids, right? So continually have those conversations, find opportunities to ask questions when you have those opportunities. And I had another one here that I thought was important. And then have more conversations. I mean, initiate a book club, for example, on various topics around DEI. Any opportunity to have the conversation. I think, part of where it kind of goes back to your earlier question about why are people not really getting it, or, what causes people, this seems so simple. Part of it is because it's one of, I heard a speech years ago from Morris Dees in Seattle. He had come for a conference. And for those of you who don't know Morris Dees, he's the head of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And his comment was that the problem about, discrimination and race is that white people, when they go home, they don't talk about race. It's not a topic of conversation at the dinner table. It's nothing that's discussed. And so what happens is, those of us, myself included, and Black and brown people, for example, who have felt oppression for many years, are constantly talking about it. but when it comes to white people, it's which makes sense when you think about it. You go back home and there's the family's all white, or they're not exposed to an opportunity to have conversations about race with people of color. Then it's out of sight, out of mind. So I think the more that conversations can be had. There also used to be years ago, you may remember this, Billy, there used to be forums on race where actual companies would come together. There would be a speaker there. I heard a couple times from Martin Luther King's daughters who came and spoke, and there would be a topic they would speak on, and there would be table captains at each one of those tables, and they would take on a conversation around the speaker's topic, right, after the speaker was done. And those types of things are really, I think they were groundbreaking for the time, right? And it's something I think now that we should totally explore. I mean, especially from an organizational perspective with companies, et cetera, in the workplace, and bringing people together to have those ongoing conversations. I'll shut up now. Drink my
One of the things, if you guys haven't ever watched the YouTube video from Emmanuel, I think his last name is Acho, A-C-H-O, Conversations with a Black Man. And it is really good. He actually wrote a book too about it. Wonderful, brilliant young man, and he sits down with celebrities and everyday people, and it's like ask a Black man anything, about questions, and because they are really uncomfortable conversations. I know that there are times where people, white people, have wanted to ask me things, but they didn't know how to ask it. But that also too is about relationship building. Yes. I have a lot of white friends, and we have built relationships along the way. They'll call me and they'll say, "Hey Billy, I can't ask our DI person here because we're not that close yet and I don't know them. But can you help me with something? Because I'm really struggling with how should I phrase this?" And, but at least they ask.
Yes.
And that's the other thing. You should not be afraid to ask. And if it is something that you don't think that and maybe this is a bonehead question or a stupid question, there is no such thing when it comes to this topic. And you can just phrase it to that person and say, I don't mean to be offensive, but I genuinely don't know the answer to this. Can you help me with this? And trust me, that means much more to me than you going out and doing the stupid or saying something stupid, because you can't take that back. You can't unring that bell. And so it's really about making sure that if you don't know, admit you don't know it. And reach out to somebody who you trust that can help you with that.
I think you just said such a key thing. I feel it's kind of a light bulb about, as a white person, I have to admit I don't know. I have to be okay, or just kind of accept that I don't know. And I need to say that to people. I think, sometimes, especially maybe, it's scary to admit I don't know. And
well, here's the thing also, Sarah, there's a lot we don't know either. Right? Am I lying, ladies? So just because we're Black doesn't mean we corner the market on all things diversity.
Oh, that's so funny.
Because you know what? We're just one color in the spectrum. You have people that are Muslim. You have people that are Arabs. You have people that are Asian. We, just like you're trying to learn about me, I'm trying to learn about all of them as well. And so it's really about recognizing that you don't know. And I'll be the first one to tell you to say, hey, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I got some old people in my family that could probably help me with that. But it really is about saying, I don't know what I don't know. And here's the other thing that I think a lot of white people don't understand, or probably haven't realized, is that Black people don't know everything about white people. We don't. And I think I have run up against some white people who have made that assumption that says, I don't know a lot about Black people. And I just turn around and said, I don't know a lot about white people. So there you go. We can learn about each other. That's what this is really about, is having those conversations, because they can be difficult for me just as they can for a white person. They can be just as difficult.
So I have a question that's kind of on topic, but This one's a deep one, but would everyone be willing to share maybe their first time they realized what race?
What race they were? Is that
Yeah.
what you said?
Like when you knew, like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
black or I'm white.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
do you remember? Does anyone want to
Oh,
share that story? Just a
I
brief
totally-
story.
Yes. Well, I grew up in Seattle, in the Central District of Seattle, and I grew up, during the Civil Rights era. And so, growing up in the 60s, yes, I knew my race. It was prevalent to me at church where I attended. My neighborhood was all Black. My family was very much activist and very involved in the church. I went to AME Church, and it was never a question. Now, what's interesting about my family is that we brought in foreign exchange students, every summer. So we had folks from Japan, and that was done intentionally for us to have as children to be exposed, to various cultures, to various, races outside of our race. But we knew, and we were raised to be proud of our race. I've forever heard the struggle from as long as I remember. Both my parents moved from the South, my father from Arkansas, my mother from Lockhart, Texas. And just hearing the stories, my dad, a number of people, especially Lenora working with me, you probably don't know this, that my dad actually played Negro League baseball. Both my parents were much older than me. So hearing the stories, I even get emotional. So when you ask that question, I've known it all my life. I'm not going to get emotional here, but knowing what they went through, just to get me here, and knowing that the work that they put in, because it was a very difficult time. So, I mean, when we are not getting into a discussion about systematic racism and the history and of why it's so important for Black Americans, but it really is. There's a lot of post-traumatic stress that a number of Black people have, mainly because of, just for me, just listening to the stories, going through the civil rights movement, watching, Watts riots, watching assassinations, all of these things that me personally have witnessed, historically, and then leading to where we are now. Yeah. And I know I've kind of went off topic, like, when did I know? I'll go back to the answer. As long as I can remember, right? Yeah, all my life. And I want to say one more comment, because this is really interesting. So my dad loved to fish. And so we would go, and we're talking early 60s, we would all go out to North Bend and all of these neighborhoods where we knew we were different. Because when we walk into these neighborhoods, and my dad was just a very proud man, he would go anywhere. So it wasn't like he felt like he shouldn't be there or anything. And so, but as children, we really felt it, the stares, the watching in the stores, just a lot of the things that happened, in those neighborhoods. And he actually had looked into purchasing property in North Bend because, it was closer to his sweet spot, right? Which was fishing, right? And, and it's, my mother kind of had some issues with that. But it's just those kinds of things growing up during that time, and, just in the Northwest and actually experiencing. So when you ask the question about when did you know, just from the experiences that I encountered, and then also because growing up in a family that let me know right away
Right.
that you are Black. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I've never ever questioned whether or not I was Black, and I attribute that. I think it's a blessing because my family on my father's side was split from a slave, and we are so much into our heritage. On my dad's side of the family, we can trace it all the way back to the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
We are very much in tune with that. I have never not known that I was Black, but I have also too have never been raised to think that I was less than.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Right.
born during the height of the civil rights movement, but I never went to a segregated school. And so even the schools up until I graduated high school, they were all integrated schools. I've never gone to a segregated school, whereas my parents did. I'm like you in a sense, Tammy, in that on my mother's side of the family, her family is a little bit sketchy because her father was adopted somehow, and nobody really has clear records on how that came to be. And he was raised by a Black woman. And so he grew up in a Black family, Black culture, everything Black. But we learned later in life that that man was actually white.
Oh,
Yes, passing for Black, for
Mhm.
real.
Mhm.
And so, but we don't know anything about him in that regard. And my mother's mother was not very close to her family either. So we have a very lost sense on my mother's side. And I knew that my mother, they grew up extremely poor. She was one of 16 kids. And I knew that was very traumatic for her. So she never really talked a lot about that. And you mentioned PTSD from it. And I wonder about that sometimes because had I learned or known a lot about my mother's growing up, I think it would have really damaged me in ways I couldn't return from. Whereas on my father's side, we embrace our heritage fully. I mean, I have cousins that have done documentaries on it and have written books about it. My son wrote a thesis on it in college. I mean, we are that much embedded in that. My niece put a thing out on Facebook the other day, and it was a white lady asking a Black girl. She says, "Are you a person of color?" And she goes, "No, I'm Black." And then she goes, "Well, are you African American?" And then she goes, "No, I'm Black." And then she says, "Well, what are you?" And the Black girl says, "I'm blackity black black."
I know. I feel like people have different preferences, right, on what they
I'm
want
Black.
to be. Right.
Exactly. I
Right.
am, and but I will say this. I've had white friends of mine ask me, what do I want to be called? And I
Right.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, I said, thank you for asking that, but I'm Black. I said, it's the politically correct thing for people to say African Americans. And I said, and I know my ancestors came from Africa, but I'm Black. And, it's just and that's my preference. I'm like Tammy. And I've never not known that I'm Black. Now, my grandson, he's 6. I think he's going to come up in a very different environment and world. And I hope he does, to where race is not a factor or a thing where he has to question that. And, because right now his friends are white, his friends are Black, his friends are Asian. He comes home and he talks about Colin, and he doesn't say Colin's white. He doesn't say Colin's Black. Colin is just Colin. But there will be a point in time where he will have to come to that reckoning. And my son and daughter-in-law will have to have that conversation with him. But I've never grown up not knowing that I was Black. I've always known it, always felt it, and I'm from the South. So that's just one of the things that you just grow up with. And in my family, we're extremely proud of that.
I think for me, growing up, I grew up on military base, so I think I'm probably a little bit more like your grandson. Like, I didn't know, like, we didn't talk about it. We just had friends, and they were from every walks of life. And then I moved to Olympia when I was in 3rd grade, and I went to an all-white school, and then I got called the N-word, and I'm like, what? And then that's when I was like, something that doesn't sound like, I'd never even heard that word before, but I knew, like, that doesn't, just the way it was said and the pit in my stomach when she said it, I was like, so I went home, and my mom was from the South, was like, what? She immediately called the school, and we handled it, or she handled it. But that was, but growing up, like, my first, until I was about 9, I was just like, that's my friend. That's my friend. She's Filipino. She's Asian. She's white. She's Black. She's, like, I just had everybody. It was like United Nations when you go to school on base.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Our son's the exact same way. And and unfortunately for my son is that he has experienced racism more than I have, honestly. Because kids, and it is one of those things. He was in the military community, but he had a white kid in school that was born and raised in Arkansas, and that's how their family talked at home, and that's how he talked at school.
Yeah,
in the 7th grade.
And I think that's probably where that young girl heard those words.
It's a learned. People. It's taught. It's a learned behavior. Kids
It is.
don't come into the world thinking like that. They pick
No.
that up somewhere. Someone's teaching them that. So it does start at home. And I think Tammy said that too. When you come into the house, if you don't talk about race and things like that, then it doesn't affect you because you feel like that's a different world.
Yes.
We talked about it all the time. I mean, and not necessarily in a bad sense, but we did.
Right.
But it's just one of those things, and people from the South, it's just you just have to talk about it. And we did. We talked about it a lot in our house. And just for the spirit of full transparency, my husband's white. And so we still have conversations to this day about that. And sometimes he'll say something off the cuff and he go, "Am I so allowed to say that?" I go, "No." So, no, he said, "Hey, I gotta know. I gotta know. I've been in this family almost 30 years now." So he knows, but we have these conversations. And what I appreciate most about my husband is that he has these conversations with our son. Because it's those kind of things. Our son's world is totally different than my husband's world.
Right.
It just is. And so it's still a learning process. Every day we're having to learn something new. Every day, all of us. Not just white people, all of us. We're having to learn something new.
Yeah.
Sarah, are you going to share?
Yeah, I instantly had a couple flashes. I think for me, it's been an evolution. I have these distinct memories of being a kid, and I grew up in an all-white country community, no diversity at all. And I think, so like what you're saying about needing to talk about, why would we talk about race? Our whole community was white. And so I remember being, I was maybe 9 or 10, and I told somebody that I wanted to be a Black president. And I hope that's not offensive, but in my little kid head, for some reason, I thought, well, I could just change. But it was like interchangeable. Somebody corrected me, and they said, well, you can't do that. And as a little kid, I was like, okay, whatever. I just accepted and moved on. And then, so I kind of am also embarrassed to say, I don't think it was until maybe 6 months ago that I really realized my whiteness. That it really sunk in about what that means. Maybe what it means to me, but what it means in society, in terms of all the systemic, how it's so intertwined.
Is there a little feedback going on?
A little bit.
Yeah, I tried to mute mine to see if no, it's gone now.
No, none for me.
Yeah.
Now it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Sarah, keep talking.
I can hear
No,
you.
it's
guys.
okay. Yeah, just that as a white person, I never had to talk about it. I never had to worry about it, which I kind of hate to say now that So,
But Sarah, you said something earlier in the show before you guys brought us on, and it was about knowing better and doing better. Because Maya Angelou said it best. You do better when you know better, and now you know. You can't not unsee it. It's what you do now going forward. And whenever I have my white colleagues and friends say, "Oh my gosh, I feel so bad about that," and I say, you really shouldn't beat yourself up over not knowing, because now you know. And I say, and if you keep dwelling on that, and I would tell you the same thing, Sarah, is that you keep dwelling on that, you're always going to feel bad about it. You're going to hinder your own self-growth in it. And you have to keep learning and to keep moving about it. Recognize what you did know then. Yes, that's fine. And recognize that. Appreciate that you did recognize it, but now you know. And so now what are you going to do with the knowledge that you have now going forward is what I would say to you.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. And I kind of wonder too if the message to because a lot of my friends are white. I think I almost feel like this onus now, this responsibility to tell them, hey, it's okay. Like I can do this. I can step into this uncomfortableness, and you can too. Come with me. I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, just like I think Billy or Tammy was saying, like, start a book club, find a book. I mean, there's so many, White Fragility and so many books out there that you could all read together. And then that helps start the conversation, right?
Mhm.
Grab a bottle of wine and, you know, do one on race.
Yeah.
Yeah, just start it up.
Yeah. I
There are a
agree.
lot of
The
things we can do.
Between the World and Me, I think is the Ta-Nehisi. I talk about this one all the time.
Yeah.
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Uh-huh.
Ta-Nehisi Coates. I always say his first name wrong, but it's the letter he writes to his son.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's
it
wonderful.
just
It's in a
blew
book.
me
I think
away.
they're putting
Have
that
you
on
read?
Broadway now.
They're doing what?
I think they're putting that on Broadway now.
Oh, really?
Oh,
They're doing
They
a
should.
play about it in New York. So they're,
Oh,
but
cool.
of course they're streaming it.
Oh, awesome.
Mhm.
oh, I need to look that up.
Yeah.
Because just as a parent, I was like, yeah, like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I can't even imagine what it would be like. And
Mhm.
yeah, that his whole thing is about, your body not being your own.
Mhm.
And the reality that maybe as a woman, I've had to struggle with that, but not in regards to my race. So
Mhm.
Well, we're kind of at the end, so we usually ask a couple of the same kind of questions as we close out. And I think one of the ones that I'd love to know from you all is, what are your big plans for this year? Like, what's one thing that you're kind of excited about that you're going to be doing over the next year? And it could be,
Getting my vaccination.
ooh,
Yeah.
yes,
Hey, we did that last Sunday, and my
Okay.
second dose is on the 15th. Yes.
nice.
Hey, that's a big deal.
That is a
It's
big
a big
deal.
deal because I
Yeah.
can get my vaccination and I can go down to Miami and see my son. So
Yeah,
Yay.
Nice.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. It makes it a lot easier when you
Right.
know that people are getting vaccinated.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. My niece said something funny the other day. Somebody was asking her something about the year because her 2021 has just gone. She said it kind of started like 2020. She said, Auntie, I swear that 2020 went in a closet, put on a different wig, came back out and said, I'm 2021.
That's funny. Yeah. Right.
I never thought about it like that, but my gosh, is she right?
Yes. I had a
Mhm.
couple friends that were trying to do dry January. So like
Oh,
no drinking. And I
Mhm.
think we all made it to like whenever the insurrection was, like January 6th. We're like, that's it, I'm out. I can't.
That was
can't do it.
That's a
Yeah.
wrap.
Billy, that's a wrap. I heard
That's
that.
a wrap. No.
Yeah. Oh,
Can I
Oh, yeah.
ask, kind of along those same lines, I'm curious what you're the most hopeful for, kind of, in your work or some,
mhm.
just what are you most hopeful about?
Well, I'll just, one of the things that I think of, because what I did not expect to happen last year. I bought a new house last year and it was horrible. I signed the paperwork in February and construction stopped in March and it was a nightmare. So it was a lot of stress, for 2020. But through that, as I got into the fall, I thought, we are so resilient, how we have been able to adjust, just like now, we're in virtual platforms like we've always been doing this. It's just amazing. So as I look to the future, I can just see us, just increasing in this, right? In this resiliency. And I also think it created an opportunity. Of course, we've had some sadness. I mean, when I think of George Floyd, when I think of, all of the, police killings and just the horrible things that happened in 2020, along with this pandemic, I've seen, though, the resilience in folks coming together as a result. And I'm hopeful that will continue. And that when we come out of this, that we're going to be a lot stronger and a lot more unified, than we were going in. So that's what I'm hoping for.
I think for me, I'm hopeful about the future, and I know that there's so many different things going on. But here in Texas, we just went through the ice snowmageddon
my
that only happens every 10 years, and you just saw the goodness in people. And, and I just totally and truly believe in the goodness of people. I really believe that at our core, we
Yes.
are a nation of true and good and kind and decent people. I think that outweighs all this other stuff and other wings and factions of people that are in this country. We're always going to have that. It's just that it has just reared its ugly head since November 3rd. The curtain, not even the curtain, the door's been knocked down, the windows have been broken off, and the roof has blown off, and the big bad wolf has come and blown it all down. And so it has just revealed itself in
Yes.
all its ugly shapes and forms. It just has. It's always been there, but now we see it. It's in the daylight. It truly is. But I believe as a nation, we have overcome so much. And I'm hopeful, and I have hope in the future of our people. I just believe in the goodness of people. And maybe I'm being naive about that, but I know that there are good people in this world, and I am just hopeful for that.
What about you, Lenora?
Oh gosh, what am I hopeful for? I think I've been saying this a lot, but I think it goes along the same lines as what Tammy and Billy have said. I'm hopeful, even though there's been so much tragedy in 2020 and in 2021, so many unnecessary deaths and murders and so much brutality, so much sadness, so many tears. And yet we have been resilient, and yet we have people that are allies. Our bench is big, and it's getting bigger. And I think I'm hopeful that we'll get more people that will look at the historical inaccuracies and realize the lies that our history books have told us, and the way they've rewritten it, and do their own research and understand what the truth is, and also understand and try to, just like Billy said, people have kindness and goodness in their heart, and I just hope that people begin to reach out more and more to each other, to your neighbors, and to people that don't look like you. Be kind.
Said.
How about you, Sarah?
Well said. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah, this is good. We're gonna have to have you ladies back on again, because I feel like we can do more, of course. And I think even when Sarah and I was talking to someone else about this, but even when we're doing our Sweet Spot show every Friday, we can always, we can begin to put more of an equity lens on whatever we're talking about, just to kind of give that perspective. I think will be important too. So thank you for inspiring us, ladies.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it was nice to meet you both.
All right.
Billy, I think you're on mute.
I know she's saying something. I know
She's talking though. She's got something good.
I know. Come on, Billy, you're on mute.
Billy, you're on mute.
I keep saying I want to get a coffee cup that says you're on mute.
I don't think she can.
Hey,
There
so
you
this
are.
is for Sarah. So Sarah, there's the Smithsonian has a wonderful website out there now, and it's talking about race. And they have done an excellent job of cataloging that. If you ever want to go out there and take a look at it, you should do that. And I don't have your email address and thing, but I'm connected with Lenora on LinkedIn. I'll send Lenora the link to pass it on to you. It's really good.
Sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate. Yeah, any resources are good.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next week on the Sweet Spot.
Yeah.
Thank you
Have
for
a great
having
week,
us.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.